What's up, folks? Casual Dad here, returning at last to Warhammer Combat Cards. And this is the fourth time I've tried to record this video um, between now and then also doing an update for the Magnus season. And I have hit every single possible technical and scheduling snag imaginable. It's crazy. So I'm really glad to be doing this. And I think personally that this is especially fortuitous that these delays happened because it's become very, very apparent to me that there's big news coming up. And that news is that we are about to get Logan Grimnar, excuse me, not Logan Grimnar. We're about to get Primarch Leman Russ back in Warhammer 40k. And there's been kind of rumors about this for a long time, but obviously right now we have a lot of Chaos Demon Primarchs back in the game in Warhammer 40k, but we haven't had a lot of loyalists. It's 2 to 4 right now, which is seems a little unfair. So yeah, obviously there'd be a Primarch coming back. It'd be one of the headliners, like the top ones. I saw some commentary. Sanguinius is dead, so he's not coming back. Obviously, it's not going to be one of the, let's call it like it is, B list. There's some really cool Primarchs out there that have really good backstory, but they're not as well known, they're not as popular, and I don't think any surviving Primarch is anywhere near as popular as Leman Russ. Like, he'd be pretty freaking phenomenal, and there's this massive release of the Space Wolves. And I want to say it was Spiky Bits. Rob from Spiky Bits had caught that the new Space Wolf Codex includes a stratagem that has been changed. Everything else is the same, but it's specifically changed to not work on monsters. And there are no monsters in the Space Wolves Codex. So there's definitely a monster coming. And all of the Primarchs so far are monsters. And you already couldn't run Gilliman or the Lion in a Space Wolves detachment that did that anyway. So, but what's really funny is, and this is one of the cool things about being a fan of Warhammer 40k and also enjoying Warhammer Combat Cards, is that Warhammer Combat Cards does a really, really good job of mirroring model releases. And there's this big event going on right now about Space Wolves. We are due for another Supreme Commander ad, and we haven't had a preview yet of who that's going to be. Like, we don't know. It's not another Demon Primarch. We're waiting on Morty. So it is only appropriate that it would be Leman Russ. But the dead giveaway to me was Logan Grimnar being added as a bodyguard. I saw him pop up. I was like, oh, okay, Logan now has the Supreme Commander variant. And then I was like, wait a minute. No, that's a bodyguard. And the only reason I could imagine Logan being demoted to a bodyguard for the new model is to be a bodyguard who goes well with the new Supreme Commander, Leman Russ. So that is fun. We're going to jump into that. Speaking of the warp, I want to make sure I do at least a real quick recap of the changes during the Magnus season. Our latest Demon Primarch up to now, Magnus the Red himself. I wanted to make sure that we do go ahead and talk about this a little bit. And to go ahead and talk about his ability, true to form for Zinc, his ability is almost as complicated to read and understand as it is to use in game. Like, in game, it's not that complicated. But so if we're to summarize this really quickly, it is whenever a psychic attack is made, all of your psychic attacks for that turn will get a plus 20% to damage. But every time you make a psychic attack, there's also a 10% chance that you will lose that bonus, and the bonus does stack. So you can, in a single turn, even this, we'll get to this. So any psychic attack gives you Cabal token. The Cabal token gives you a 20% bonus to your psychic attacks for every single card on the board, including the one making the attack. So first card drops a Warp Surge, for example. That's a psychic attack. Before your turn even happens, all of your cards on the board get a plus 20% bonus to their attack because you have one Cabal token. Then you get your actual attacks. Say you have 2 Psychers on the board. Your 1 Cabal token becomes 3, and you get a plus 60% bonus to your psychic attacks on the board. But every single time a card makes a psychic attack, a friendly card makes a psychic attack, there's a 10% chance per Cabal token that you can lose half of your Cabal tokens, rounded up, rounded down, and then the card making that current psychic attack will do double damage. This is a psychic overload, but then they will take 10% of their starting wounds as damage. So it's not a huge amount of damage, but it can do a lot of damage pretty quickly to your own cards. And it hits for just a massive whopping psychic attack. It is nuts how much this can buff stuff. And of course, this is on top of any ready values you may have. This is on top of any inspiring presence you may have. And I really like this one because it's so complicated. It's so Zinchi. It's so very much. It's the first warlord in Chaos that specifically buffs psychic attacks, which has always been funny. Even Ahriman isn't exactly a synergy card. He just does stuff. Very Zinchi, but not very psychic. And comparing this to the other psychic bonus warlords, you've got Voldus and you've got Eldrad. Eldrad's bonus is 30% per attacking card, but only in that turn. So you have to have 3 psychers or 3 psychic attacks. Yeah, you have to have 1 psychic attack per card on your board to get the most bonus out of it, and the first one to attack really doesn't get much bonus for it at all, and it doesn't stack turn to turn. Magnus, by contrast, this bonus builds up and actually sits on the table. So if you have a card that wasn't even on the board last turn, it will still, even if it's the first attacker, benefit from your existing Cabal tokens, which is cool. And then likewise for Voldus, Voldus relies on cards dying and deploying additional cards. And so this doesn't. So the Cabal tokens stay on the board. The Cabal tokens are around indefinitely, and you can bank them, right? So if you alternate attack types, so if you have melee or ranged to the secondary attack type, you can keep your Cabal tokens and not Psychic Attack that turn and punch or shoot instead and save that Psychic Blast for later. I really enjoyed this too because it really encourages, for the first time ever, obviously, if we're talking ladder decks, this one stands out, right? You want to use your Lord of Change, your basic blue chicken, as kind of your mainstay, especially of Psychic in Chaos. And he's a really, really, really strong card. Really strong card. And this is a strong deck. And we're going to go ahead and play this before I talk about the next ones. So we'll see the. Or not. We'll try that again. We're going to see this in action. And of course, this is the Supreme Commander. It's not necessarily recommended to run them in the ladder, but I personally have found the Supreme Commanders are underrated in ladder play. They're actually pretty good in competitive play. Is that a 4? This is going to be weird. Okay. So we got a Warp Surge. We're immediately going to have a Cabal token, and then we have Psionic Blast, and it's my turn, so we'll have an additional Cabal token, and then we'll throw this guy in here. So we're going to get a maximum of 5 Cabal tokens. And just to go ahead and say it, the percent value you see in the bottom left is the percent chance of getting a Warp Surge. That is doing the double bonus damage, but then losing half your Cabal tokens. So I've got 20%, 2 Cabal tokens already. So this guy's going to hit for plus 40%. And you already see that. You should see, and you'll see this go up again for my third Cabal token. The third Cabal token, 26, fourth, 68, fifth, 312. And you just saw what happened there. I just took some damage and lost my Cabal token on this. Let me slow this down, actually. So we've got 3 Cabal tokens plus 60% base damage. Going to hit for 26. Going to go up again. Splat. Oh, but then we had a Warp Surge, so he died. Okay. All right, there's the risk. Got another one there. 60 damage. And then we had another Warp Surge. Okay. But you saw. Wow, that actually slows down your victory screen too. So you saw just how devastating that attack was, how much damage it built up. It was a little bit self-destructive where it hit my own things because, of course, chaos is fickle and chaos that happens, and Zinch's plans are inscrutable. So I really love that, and I promise I'll get to the Space Wolf season in a minute, but I wanted to make sure to catch this, and I haven't had a chance to talk about Magnus yet, and we'll be doing a Warlord guide as well, just to go ahead and have it. But one of the things that I particularly enjoy about Magnus is he actually encourages you using psychers other than your mainstay superpower pieces, because all of these benefit from that psychic bonus. All of them hit much harder at that point. And this is actually an incredibly efficient psyker deck with a Supreme Commander on the board. And I did want to highlight a couple things too. We'll talk about that in a second. We'll go ahead and deploy this one just so you can see the difference. I really appreciate Supreme Commanders who add something to the game that can work with the mainstay pieces, but then also does open up options to run different things. We saw some pretty significant buffs to most of the cards in this. The Brimstone Horrors are new. We'll go ahead and go a little faster than that. We saw a buff to Neems, who got nerfed to heck and then has been buffed back up. It's a lot of, yeah, we're gonna sit on that for a minute. We'll get Warp Surge. We're going to go ahead and charge up, so we immediately get a Cabal token. Another Cabal token for the Psionic Blast. And so Neems, he's level 11, but Neems is already hitting for 104 damage before it's even his turn to attack. So we got 22, 80, 97. And that, so there's always a chance. So right now there's a 50-50 chance that any psychic attack, including Psionic Blast, will trigger a Warp Surge. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because that Warp Surge then is crazy powerful. And I do want to go ahead and highlight again that you double the number here to see your bonus. So right now I'm dealing 120% bonus psychic damage. So he's already built up to 163. So you're unlikely to get that high, because obviously the odds are better that I'm going to go ahead and get a Warp Surge now than not. But not by much. And let's see if we can take down Goldaka. Oh, we got a Warp Surge. There it is. Okay. And then, of course, that dropped by half. So there's a lot of like numbers moving and stuff going on. It feels very Zinchi. And so there we were able to use the Warp Surge to take down Goldaka. So that was a 21-point card taking down a 60-point card in a single shot. Kind of two, because I had to get through the shields first. But that still is just crazy damage. And I'll also note that in both of these games, I still haven't played Magnus at all. So Magnus himself hasn't even been on the board. And when I'm looking at these Supreme Commanders, I personally would rate Angron as by a mile the strongest. And that's still true. I do think that Angron is still better than Magnus. But Magnus is pretty darn good, and they're all pretty darn good, including in the ladder and in the Apocalypse, of course. So in Apocalypse max level events, the Demon Primarchs are very, very strong. But I do think that Magnus may be the second strongest after Angron, just because of how good Chaos Psychers are and how good Psychic is in the game. And I really, again, you saw a card die to a Warp Surge. Bummer. But then we had another one, and that's going to be lethal with the poison. So that's just so much damage. My 10-point card just hit for over 100 damage multiple times that game. Yeah, comfortable win, easy. I definitely recommend, if you got Magnus, to go ahead and experiment with him and see that, because that's a lot of fun. And he's cool. I really enjoy him. I've always liked Magnus in the Thousand Suns as a Chaos chapter, as a piece of the lore, and it's cool to see that reflected in this and how well I think he was brought to the battlefield. And that's got to be challenging, having this very established game where there's only a couple attack types. There's really only so much wiggle room you have for design, including that token effect and having there both be the bonus damage but at a cost. Like, it's so appropriate for Chaos and Tzeentch, and it's good. I really appreciate that. And like Angron and Magnus, I think more than anything nailed it. Fulgrim, I don't fully understand, but I don't know as much about him, and it's a thing. So that makes sense. So without further ado, I've got one final note about the Thousand Suns season. And let's see. I'm going to look at Chaos just to talk about this real quick. And so I just filtered down to only Chaos cards that have a Psychic attack. The big piece I want to talk about that isn't in there anymore is one of the key things that the Magnus Thousand Sun season did is it reinforced the theme. It reinforced the core of what makes the Thousand Suns, and the Psychers and Chaos. A lot of the Psychers and Chaos had weird ready values where their ready was a psychic debuff, for example. So Kairos, there was no reason whatsoever to take him over the base Lord of Change, because the Lord of Change has the psychic buff on top of regen. And this guy, I think, was more expensive and did less damage. So that's been tweaked a little bit. But the key change that's happened here is that Kairos now has a psychic buff ready, not a psychic debuff ready. That means that he is now a really, really strong piece in Psychic Supreme Commander Abaddon deck. If you're running Supreme Commander Abaddon, this guy and a couple others were just like tweaked a little bit, so they got some bonuses, but then they added the Psychic buff. Not so much that one. Let's see, this one lost his ranged attack completely in exchange for a buffed psychic attack, and then also getting that psychic buff ready. I want to say Saurian Loke. Like, a lot of these were tweaked a bit, so now there's much more emphasis on the psychic ready, which is so good, because that means that a psychic Supreme Commander Abaddon is now a monster in the ladder, where it was an attack type that was just missing. You couldn't really do with him in a very successful way. So that was cool. Love to see that. Yeah, all in all, a great season that I think that was not changed. So I really liked it. It was fairly basic. I hadn't gotten a chance to talk about it now. Didn't play as much as I wanted to, but pretty cool. So here we are. We're going to go ahead and jump to the Space Wolf season. Go ahead and reset this. And this cracked me up a little bit. There are a couple things that I found pretty funny here. But let's go ahead and without further ado, let me actually talk about the balance changes. Hope you're still with me. Developer update, balance changes, and Space Wolves season. Start on Monday, July 7th. Obviously, already happened. Moving from the machinations of the Thousand Suns, we find ourselves face to face with their arch rivals, the Space Wolves. A conflict as bitter as the winter of Fenris. While the forces of the Astartes and their fallen kin clash, we also have some time to reflect on the changes to the battlefield. It's been a few seasons now since the ranked mode changes were introduced. That is adding the modifiers where in ladder battles, come on, yeah, there we go. So from Terra and beyond, your opponent's decks will be buffed by a flat percent to both their hit points and their attacks. So Terra is plus 10%. The Imperial Palace is plus 20%. And then you max out at the absolute top tier of every single ladder season in the Dark Cells with a plus 30% bonus to all attack stats and wounds for all opposing decks. We're introduced new arenas, an adjusted trophy system, and ranked modifiers. With enough data collected, we're ready to share some analysis and give you a clearer picture of the current state of play. Which must be fun. I bet it's a really good time doing this and getting to see the results of these experiments. Across the top arenas, the average win rate has dropped by about 6%, which I'm actually surprised that's fairly low, compared to where it was in Terra. Now sitting at 75% in the Dark Cells arena, which still is high. So 3 out of 4 games, even in the Dark Cells, are still wins. That's still a high win rate, but it represents a meaningful increase in difficulty. This shift brings a healthier level of challenge and better distinguishes player skill without feeling overly punishing. There's been some grumbling about that. It might be a little overly punishing to some, but on the whole, I think people have been pretty happy about it. This impact has been consistent across all ranks. Now that's cool, with a uniform drop in win rate. That's exactly what we were aiming for. And I think I mentioned this before, but stretching out the multiple arenas also gives the matchmaking a better lens to look at when it's choosing what decks you're going to be matched against. It has a better way to judge how powerful your cards and decks actually are based against whatever else is out there. Where before it was a little bit tougher, where there's this massive pool at the bottom 3/4, and then everything above that, it was very powerful. So it helps to stretch it out a bit and make sure that there's just more factors to look at. So the one goal that hasn't quite landed is card variety. With players able to freely switch factions at the start of each season, and with added pressure at the top, we hope to see a more noticeable shift in the meta, whether through experimentation or new deck builds. Well, there has been some movement, it hasn't been significant. And I think there are 2 key reasons for that. Number 1 is that this is still new. And number 2, I think that most players are not experimenting because they're, for the most part, the decks that were really, really powerful before this modifier still are, and there are very few decks that actually get punished by this. The vast majority of them still are the ones you want to take, even with these modifiers, and maybe even more so. Now, I've switched it up a little bit. I've talked about the Psionic Blast Poison Flyrunt being my personal ace against this, and Logan Grimnar of the Space Wolves being one of my favorites to run in this as well. Yeah, I think that most players have favorite stuff that still works, that works well, and they're still largely running that. And I think with a 75% win rate, there may actually not be enough pressure at the top to really push for more card variety. But also, a lot of players are running some of their best stuff. They don't have all cards max. They don't have all the warlords. They don't have all the bodyguards. So I wonder how much variety is possible for most players. I don't know. I don't see the numbers. I don't know. Overall, ranked mode is in a solid place. These changes will remain in place for now, though we do have some new features coming soon, TM, which we're excited to share in the weeks ahead from Leman Russ. That might shake things up again. We've achieved the core goal, raising the difficulty in top tier ranked without making it unreasonably tough, and doing so in a way that treats all players fairly. And I mean, really, I think this was a very good change. It is a very simple change, and it's a little bit ham-fisted isn't exactly the word, but it's like very much just like harder button, which I think is good. I enjoy it, but I do kind of understand how there's mixed feelings about that. I'm curious to see what comes next, because this is the kind of change you make when you're preparing to make a series of changes kind of one at a time, and this is the first test, which this implies as well. We're not locked into a fixed path, and future adjustments are always on the tabletop. But for now, the changes are working as intended, and that's a good place to be. With discussion on ranked mode changes covered, let's dive into this month's changes in full. And this is super funny. So when we get into this, I want you, I won't preview. So we'll start with Space Marines and Space Wolves. Number one is Brother Brand of the Space Wolves. Let me actually do this. Yeah, there we go. Brother Brand. And this is the 6-point Blood Claw. Goes +8 melee, +8 base melee. Space Marines have very few options for cheaper cards, and those few that are available are staples. Unfortunately, despite Brand's price point, he's fairly low on pick rate from melee decks, and with his Deathblow trait, this increase to melee should make a significant difference. I find most often in Space Marine decks, I don't have a 6-point hole in the deck. I have a 4, a 3, 4, or 5-point hole, and I either fill it with the 5-point card, the cheapest you can get, or I find a way to use those points to buff up some other cards in the deck and build it up there. It's extremely rare for me to end up reaching for the cheapest possible card and keeping it in there. So I just don't use the 6-point very much, just because that's enough to really upgrade something from like a 24 to a 30. And I think that's the biggest reason I don't pick him. But I mean, this is fair. Like, he's definitely going to be more tempting at that point. And with the new glow up, with that cool new artwork, and a lot of these guys got some updated artwork, which is pretty sweet. Um, yeah. Number two, Cogfang, who was my go-to rare wild card for there. So I just hit max level in between now and my last recording. +4 base melee, a much more popular lower point cost option for the Space Wolves. And Space Wolves really like a melee scout because they benefit from hitting hard all at once. They don't want a bonus over turn. They want to hit really, really, really hard on the turns when you get the buff. So Cogfang is a really good piece in there. I don't know why this guy's in here. Wolf Squad. There it is. Okay. All right. Interesting. Um, Cogfang still could benefit from a small buff. As a high impact one off card, upping the melee is the obvious choice for most impact. And when I'm doing pure Space Wolves, I do find I have an 8-point hole in the deck fairly often and have all the other stuff I might want. It's not 10 that would have me reach for the cheap Medicae. It's 8 so I can fill with him. And I just like Cogfang. He's a cool character. And for the 8 points, hits very, very hard and does a really good job of buffing your other cards as well. So, yeah, just great. Next, Scarin the Reaper, Thunderwolf Cavalry, who's one that nobody takes. That's this 11-point Berserk. +15 wounds, that's his base wounds, and that you can feel that. You can really feel that here with this up wounds there. He's always been a little bit of a tough pick to take because he was Berserk with very few wounds, but that is a very meaningful upgrade. He's already been performing fairly well for me last season, even in the Dark Cells, and this is a great buff. We've been examining a lot of lower mid-cost Berserker options, and Scarin definitely falls into that camp. Excuse me. But we don't want to remove them from the game entirely, so rather than a trait swap, I would hate it if Berserk went away completely. So I'm glad to see that the cards that are still there, there are fewer of them, but they're still getting looked at. We're looking at a decent increase in wounds to support this role, which is great. And it makes sense with Thunderwolf Cavalry, too, to be this durable piece that takes a while to bring down. Next, we got Malik Rageborn, dropping 1 point from 17 to 16. Ooh. The Space Wolves Wolfen, +5 base melee. And so the down a point is a bigger buff probably than the +5 base melee, but still, +5 base melee. A bit expensive for a throwaway Deathblow card, Malik could do with being higher impact at a lower cost. And that's exactly what we've done. And then we have Sven Iron Fist, and I absolutely love this card. My best friend's name is Sven, so I always love running this, and it's good. And I personally really love running this in Logan decks because it gets so much bulk with the 300 hit points. He's expensive, but he takes so long to bring down. While he's still up, he does meaningful ranged attack back, melee attack back, and that death blow means that he's always impactful, even if you kind of struggle to get the most out of your utility until he dies. Like, he's a really solid piece in a Space Wolves deck, especially in a Logan deck, and I really enjoy running him. I found him to be a very powerful piece. He got -2 cost from 64 to 62, -30 wounds. That's a bummer, but still. +15 base melee, and you feel that immediately. And if I get one more level on this guy, over 100, which is nice. I don't think he was at that point, even at max before. The biggest non-legendary cards always struggle to make the lineup, so the formidable Sven sees a small drop in points, as well as rebalancing stats to maximize their offensive output and make the most of his trait. He's got like no backstory at all either, like nothing. I looked this up and it's like, he is mentioned once. It's a thing. And then let's see. Yeah, that's a thing. Um, But yes, love to use them. I really love doing death plus spam with Logan, or yeah, with Logan Grimnar. I really enjoy going all Space Wolves, and I've always found that the balance between the cards and the synergy with them really works out well with his ability. Let's see. Then we've got Ragnar Blackmane, the Black Wolf. And Ragnar is, yeah, so let's see, -2 cost. So he's now below Big Game Hunter range, which is an awesome buff for him because he's got a lot of hit points. He's got that Berserk. He's got that meaningful Death Blow, which is more meaningful because of Berserk. I really like him, and getting him to that rank, that Death Blow, really has made a huge difference in terms of running him. Well, they need 3 more, huh? Yeah, we're going to use one of those right now. In honor of the video, in honor of the wolves. There you go, Ragnar. Ragnar straddles that tricky spot at 40 points being in Big Game Hunter range without being able to be so far above it to have stats to compensate. So taking him down to 2 points and out of the threat range for those cards immediately boosts his viability across all melee rosters, as well as freeing up precious room in a Space Marine roster. Yes, and a big challenge for him is just that a lot of players don't really like him because of the other things in the 40 to 43 point slot. There's some really scary cards in the low 40s, and he sort of struggled to compete. And I ran him a lot because he was in Space Wolves. It was in theme with Space Wolves, and I ran a Space Wolves melee deck, so it made sense to have him in there. And the Death Blow is very powerful with Logan's ability, so I love it, but I totally understand that he needed a buff to compete with the others generally. And then before we jump to Eldari, this is why I found this so funny. And you may have noticed that I use all of the cards that have been buffed. And so my Logan Grimnar ladder deck for last season that did quite well, and I really enjoyed it, was basically this. And there are 2 differences here. So I had the 11-point Deathblow Raven Guard Marine in here before and didn't have this guy in here. But I've gained so many points in this because I gained, I want to say 5 full points. See, we got 1 here, we got 2 here, another 1 here. Yeah, so I saved 2 on Ragnar, 2 on Ven, so 4, 5 with Malik. So I saved 5 points. So my 1 spare point ended up being enough to bring this guy if I shuffled stuff around a bit. So my entire deck got buffs, which is awesome. I saw this and I was like, no, surely not the whole thing. And I even reached out to Mad Imp, the main designer of the game here, excuse me. And I said, you just buffed my deck. And he said, really? Even Sven? And yes, Sven is one of my favorite cards in this deck. And I hadn't really thought about that. But then in hindsight, I imagine not a lot of players run him. So this is my deck. I love it. Try it if you can. All right. And then we get to other factions. We got some fun stuff on this too. So we start with the Eldari. And we're looking at one of the cheaper cards that's been around for a while that I just don't really think of very much. And that is Alethir Quicksilver. And he does so much damage to melee with that anti-infantry, but I forget he had that. I still remember him as having the melee scout, so I don't even think about it. But he got -10 wounds for +10 base melee, which adds up real fast. He's still got decent wounds for the cost. They're okay. And being an Eldari, you kind of want your cards to die or hit very hard and then die. So this becomes a really powerful piece in a melee Lilith deck, as a filler in a Lilith deck, or in a Rakarth deck. Having no ranged means he's not so great in Zephyrblade decks, but he certainly has a place in most of the other warlords. And that's really cool. And no Illic. He's no good on Illic. Don't put him in there. An older and easy to overlook option for melee builds, much like the changes to Cogfang, we're looking up to boost that first turn impact, and by disproportionately increasing the attack over the wounds lost. Alethir fits much better into the overall Glass Cannon Eldari theme. This guy will just flatten cards twice his cost, because if they're infantry, so that's good. Next up, we have a mainstay and one of my personal favorites. The theme of this season is just the stuff that I love gets buffed. That happens a lot, and it's not cards that I talk about all that often, but they're cards that I use a lot and have used for a long time. So I did used to use the last guy quite a bit, and don't use him as much now. I'm giving him another look this season. Clayvulch I use all the time. And he got a base +5 melee, because usually you take him because he's got good hit points for the cost and has shields. That wasn't enough now that there are other shielded cards in the faction. So this is good. Beyond the utility of Clayvulch's shield, a rare trait in the Eldari lineup, they have an underwhelming stat line. With the increase in damage output, they should offer a bit more than just a roadblock, which I really appreciate. Horrific in an avatar deck if you can find the points. I love this. I love the triple attackers. Where are you, buddy? And them getting a buff, especially this guy. This guy frankly sucked. 10 points, sure, but overall his stats were just terrible. So RDL got a buff +5 to range, psychic, and melee base. So his attack stats are actually pretty meaningful now, and he will slot into any of the decks that give attack stat buffs. So Eldrad, of course, he's a natural fit there, but then also he's not bad in a Zephyrblade deck. He's not awful in an Avatar deck, and he's got a place in the other decks as well. So I really like to see that. And then one of the most powerful cards in the Eldari lineup that also was buffed recently. Get how exactly, but he did get buffed not too long ago, and he got buffed again. Look at those stats. He's still squishy, and he's still expensive at 33, but like almost 50 attack in all four stats, plus a very high psychic attack for 33 points. Eleanor the Augur also got a +5 flat buff to all three attack types. Both of these triple attack psychers are getting an all-round attack buff. Triple attack cards are always hard to get the correct level of bounce, but of the psychic decks out there, these two are lower on the list, and it would make sense that the need to spread their attacks does a disservice in more offensive weighted psychic deck build. So I love the flexibility of these guys. I actually want to tinker with a Lilith deck that focuses on a huge variety of attack types, so you have a lot of options. Those decks usually tend to be very mono ranged, mono melee, or split the difference between the two and don't really do psychers. These guys both have a place in being like a very flexible, fast, like jet bike psycher deck, which I'm very excited to try out. So there's that. Next we have servants. Servants. And this is kind of a funny one. A couple changes here. We're looking at this guy, the Pedinoris, +5 range, +5 melee. While a good mid-range inspiring option, the Vexillus Praetor doesn't bring much offense to the table. An all-rounder buff should help. An all-round buff should help make him a more threatening in his own right in a faction spoiled for inspiring options. And this is really challenging. He doesn't have shields. He's competing at the 27-point slot with these two who are just better for being epic and having just better stats. And then it's very easy to reach for one of the cheaper options too, instead of this guy, because mostly all he offers is chonk. Even at max level, max inspiring presence, his base melee attack sucks. His hit points are good, but not that good for the cost relative to the attack stats he brings. If you want to run all custodians, it's really cool to have the option, and I think he's definitely going to appear there, especially with Trajan decks. But the biggest limitation for me, though, is of course that mine is only level 6. Until he has that rank 3 inspiring presence, he's just not worth replacing any of the other options for. And I'm going to reach for the 12 point basically every single time. She's super good. Where'd she go? 12 point. V12? V16. Where's 12? Yeah, there we go. I'm going to reach for her the 7 point basically every single time because her attack stats are kind of close to his at half the points cost with a not unreasonable amount of wounds. Better ranged, comparable melee. If we're talking up here, like, there is very little reason ever to take him over her. And I don't know how the math necessarily works out balancing cards against each other. Obviously, there's always going to be options. His melee is better. So if you're doing a melee-focused deck, his hit points are better. So if you're doing a durability-focused deck, I can still see a place for him, but I'm not going to run him. But still, it's cool to see him get a buff. This is one I am going to run because I constantly reach for this guy, put him in decks, take him out, put him in decks, take him out. He's still one of my favorite cards just because I like his personality for some crazy reason. Stonechtooth Harker, the old school Catachan, like, this guy brings back memories of the first Warhammer like model catalog I ever looked at, an actual physical paper catalog, black and white pewter models. I remember this design style really stood out as a kid, and I love it. So he got +10 wounds and +5 base range. He needs it. I really, really like him in a budget Vol deck, either Supreme Commander or just base Morven Vol. He's fun. A classic model with a classic card, Harker has been outstripped somewhat in quality over the years, so this should bring him much more in line with other recent options. And I just like him, so any buffs he gets is great. I don't think anyone basically ever runs him because I never see him, but it's still I'd love to have the guy on the board. So there's that. And then we got Jaren Kell, right hand of Greed. Where are you, Color Sergeant Kell? Go. No. +20 wounds for a nice chunk to wounds. And that's another like sub 20 point inspiring presence card that really competes with that Vexillus Praetor. Obviously visually looks a little bit weird if you're going for custodians, you bring this guy, but awesome in a pre-deck, of course, awesome in a Cadian deck, like really like him. Despite Creed's popularity, Hell doesn't get much of a look in, which is a shame. The increase in wounds should help him do his role for longer and make him more likely to stick around for the redeploys if paired with the other half of the infamous duo. And I love that you can do Creed, Hell, and Nork Dead Dog, the like super bodyguard. It's really cool to have those all together in the game, so you can do a very flavorful thematic deck with them. This is one I was surprised to hear some of the commentary on this guy. This card has always stood out to me as like a durable, strong piece, and I was surprised to hear that it needed some love, but apparently it did. Omicron 99 Scythe, plus 10 base range. You can see that. And like this melee is no joke. Once you get up to the upper level like that, melee on this thing that's clearly designed to be a ranged card, he's pretty darn good. A bulky mid-cost barrage card needs to deliver one thing more than any other, and that's damage output. With lots of high-value barrage options for servants, the Castellan needs a little help in damage performance to justify them in a mid-cost slot position. You get this guy up to his Omni levels or higher, like a max level version of this for 29 points is a very, very tough, strong card. Really good. I definitely recommend trying some Mechanicum-focused Supreme Commander Call decks with this guy in there, because with those hit points, that regen and the bonus to damage definitely justifies fitting in like a more robust, well-rounded deck than just a couple key pieces. Yeah, I like it. And then the big elephant in the room that had a lot of people kind of surprised when talking about it, although it is a welcome change, is the change to Supreme Commander Gosar. Supreme Commander Gosar has the ability where every single time you deploy a card, it gives every other card in your hand and deck a flat percent buff. And it was 10%, it is now 5%. So Supreme Commander Gosar, Ascension Day buff per card deployed changed from 10% to 5. So it's halved. The buff is halved, but it's still really good. And he still is able to replay if you play a card that is 10 points or less and it dies for the first time, you get a token of that card in your deck. So you get additional plays of them. So you can play a massive deck. And that's actually the biggest advantage of Gosar, Supreme Commander Gosar in general, is just those redeploys. The buff to damage is good, and I've played with him since the change. He's still a very strong warlord. Yeah, I think this was necessary, and this commentary says why. It's been called for a while now, and with the concrete data we have from the last few seasons, it's finally time for a Gosar adjustment. They are now notably prevalent in win rate, and most of all as an opponent. So when humans are playing against an AI Gosar, Supreme Commander Gosar, they tend to lose, and you don't want that. More clearly, he's proving very hard to beat, especially with the arena modifiers. Yeah, you add his ability on top of the Dark Cells bonus, no fun. This nerf is a considerable one in that it halves the stat bonus, but since that's only one half of the two-part rule, he should still be a potent warlord. Yeah. And frankly, it was never even a necessary part. If he was cheaper and didn't even have the second part of the rule, he'd still be really strong. So this makes he's still a very, very strong warlord, and I think that he's still going to perform very well. So should be fine. Next up was one where it's a card I never expected to see changed, literally ever. This is the Harridan. This thing. 5 Herald, -3 cost. We've been progressively reviewing Lord of War performances, and as one of the older ones, the Harridan is now in a position for adjustment, and while stats and traits are in a good place, the cost could come down. So here's the change. So yeah, little points shave off on this one. My biggest reason not to take him is level. I get him 2 more levels to level 6. Will certainly be a tempting piece. The combination of that high damage in both attack stats, melee and ranged, and fear makes him a really frightening piece. Very scary card. Yeah, that concerns me. This is a change that I'm really excited about because I love to see Genestealer cults get like reworked and get a little bit more of an identity shift. So we're looking at Hisser. Changed from he got -20 wounds, plus 10 base melee, so he hits harder out of the gate to compensate for losing Berserk, and now has regen. A 19-point, 200 hit point card with regen is a really good piece in non-Supreme Commander Gosar. I really love this, and this gives Tyranids a bunch of options for durability. You can load your deck with regen, taunt, and Medicae now, and really have a stick in the mud deck that's hard to get rid of. Yeah, great change from Berserk to regen. While we don't want to change around all the Berserker cards, this one makes sense, as Debt Swit is too popular, and close and analog buffing Hisser too much will get them into too similar position. And as a competition, Hisser can't win. Hisser's just not going to beat Debt Swit, and Debt Swit is the Deathblow guy over here. This guy. Crazy good. So a bit of a restructure to give Hisser a slightly different role is in order, and this should do the trick. And I immediately want to reach for the non-Supreme Commander Gosar and try this out. And that's a really cool spot to be. I love having an opportunity or an incentive to try out the older warlords, especially the ones that were a little bit kind of less shiny and exciting than the Supreme Commanders. And I think he's in a really good spot right now. With that covered, that's all the balance changes for this season. And as always, here's a list of cards being added to the general pool. I will not cover that, aside to say there's a Ratlings kill team that's pretty fun in there, and there's a couple good boy puppies to watch for. Fixer Herc, the Ratling Fixer. Oh, look at this guy. Everybody get as many good boys as you can. Where are you, buddy? Fixer. What? Search and find him. No. He said, yeah, there he is. The Battle Mutt, the Rattling Battle Mutt. I love this. Really happy to see this. Always do love Rattlings. It's a funny subfaction. I really enjoy Pavlo. I also love seeing these and thinking that they're stakes that he's running around grimly hunting vampires. But yeah, he's there. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the cosmetics and the Battle Pass. The Battle Pass, of course, is Space Wolves focused. There's one other thing I'm going to cover on that note at the end here. But so we've got the cool, let's see, all the way at the top, all the way, yeah. We've got Arjak Rockfist, a really strong epic card, really good melee piece with that Shields and Furious Charge. Really tough to take down and does some damage on the way down. I don't have him in my Logan Grimnar decks because I think he doesn't hit hard enough quickly enough. I like those to be a little bit punchier, but he's a very strong deck in your Akaran decks. And of course, feeds to the shield spam. And of course, a massive pile of Brother Brand, your 6-point card. And then, let's see, we've got the Logan cosmetic here. I can't click on that. That's the Warlord frame. We got, of course, oh yeah, that would be enough to level him up. Ragnar Blackmane, the Black Wolf. And then, of course, Logan himself. You do get access to Logan Grimnar as a Warlord here. The card back, very nice, very nice. Iron Priest, who I never use because mine's too low level. Lucas the Trickster, who I will not be excited about until he gets a new model, because crap, that thing is old. I will need to check. It seems that he is in the new codex, which seems crazy because his model is ancient. But then, of course, you've got a lot of legendaries in this one. So you get Bjorn. It looks like a portrait. Then you've got Skarn the Reaper, Malik Rageborn. This one's a great one. Still fairly new. I don't really know how it'll perform because I've never actually got him on the table, really, except in max level events and where I don't really understand how to use him because I haven't practiced. Ooh, Murder Fang. All right. Has not been buffed. Is legendary, so that secondary trait of Berserk isn't totally wasted. That's a really scary card. Really scary card. And then I love this banner. I love that wolf banner. So there's that. And then there was actually some commentary on this. Someone did ask if it was possible to get past cosmetics, and they just added a store tab where you can actually get past cosmetics. And if you want to buy cosmetics, they'll be here rotating like the others. I really appreciate that because up to now, it's if you missed them, you missed them. They were just gone. And if you have a sub-faction that you really love and want to feel honored in the game, you can get it here. And the price point is like very reasonable for just it is just in-game cosmetics, but it could have been a lot more, and I appreciate that being a very reasonable offer. And then keep an eye out for all of the crazy campaigns going up along with the Wolf. This one is a fun one. I'm really enjoying doing this one. I'm almost done with it. Yeah, and then we should see some more Space Wolf events coming up. There is a whole calendar of events that I did not take a screenshot of when it popped up earlier. I was too busy thinking about how exciting it was that Leman Russ was coming back. But yeah, I'll leave it at that. There we are. Cheers. Happy to be back.